What's up again there, guys? Brian here at 3K. Welcome to the next episode of the People's Questions, episode 278. We got a pretty standard episode. It might be a little bit longer than last week's, but let's jump right into it. The first question comes from Matt Cruz, and you want to know, what was the most interesting karma choice of the Infamous franchise? I think the most interesting karma choice took place in the first Infamous, and pretty much it was a scenario where Kessler had kidnapped Trish, which is your girlfriend in that game, and he wanted you to make a choice between either just saving her or saving 5 doctors, and he made a point of saying, you know, if you save Trish, you know, then you're kind of selfish because you're willing to sacrifice the lives of 5 doctors that could save far more people than she could. What I liked about it the most is that regardless of your choice, the outcome was the same. If you actually tried to save Trish, you would find out that wasn't really Trish, and she was tied up with the other doctors, and so she ended up dying anyway. But if you choose to sacrifice Trish to save the doctors, then it kind of shows that you're willing to make a personal sacrifice for the greater good. And I really think that says a lot about Cole's character. But that was by far probably one of the most emotional moments of the Infamous franchise, and definitely the most interesting karma choice. Next question comes from Gokusen. You want to know, how do I think Shepard would fare against enemies in Metal Gear Solid, like Rex, Ray, etc.? I think he would be just fine, because you have to remember that a lot of his equipment is futuristic. I mean, you have biotics, and you have all these super powerful plasma and explosive weapons. He wouldn't really have all that much difficulty. Yeah, I think Shepard would be able to handle. Heck, if anything, I think he'd be able to handle the Metal Gear Solid storyline easier than either Snakes ever did. So yeah. Next question comes from Stanton Scorpion. You want to know, what is my least favorite movie? Movie 43, by far. It is the worst movie I will ever see in my life ever. Next question comes from Dmitry Toofer. You want to know, and you had 2 questions, but I'm only going to answer the first one. And you want to know, if I were part of the Jedi Order, what class would I be? Jedi Guardian, Jedi Consular, or Jedi Sentinel? I would not want to be a Jedi Sentinel, because pretty much you're just a glorified bodyguard at the temple. So you don't really get to see much of the galaxy. So I think that just being in the temple the whole time would be kind of boring. I don't really think being a consular would be all that interesting too, because though you have a little bit more freedom, you pretty much spend most of your time just meditating on the Force. Kind of like what Yoda does. I mean, Yoda is more of a teacher than a warrior, but he really spends most of his time when he's not teaching and not on the battlefield just meditating, and I don't think that's really all that enjoyable. Being a Jedi Guardian, I think, is the most exciting part, because one, you spend a good amount of your time practicing your lightsaber combat, which I'm a big fan of, and you have all these crazy assignments, and so you get to see the galaxy, and you're given much more freedom, much more time to yourself, and so I think I would absolutely want to be a Jedi Guardian. Next question comes from one of the, I think, newbies, but you go by the name simply known as Slater. And you want to know, what made me decide to change the next versus matchup from Cloud versus Squall to Steiner versus Gladius? What really made I actually changed it at the last minute. What made me really want to push it back was the announcement that the new Dissidia game was finally coming here to the States. Squall versus Cloud is by far my most anticipated matchup that I've ever done out of any of my versus series, because this is really going to be a contest between my number 2 favorite characters of all time. I mean, Orin is my number 1, but Cloud and Squall are dead tied for being number 2, so I don't really know which one is better at this point. And I felt like if there's an opportunity to actually show a fight or a visual example of Cloud fighting Squall, I want to use that. And in fact, I have several matchups that I'm pushing back just so I can get footage from the Dissidia game, because I don't want to do it in my usual style. So as soon as that game comes out, that's when I'll probably start working on the Squall versus Cloud matchup. I mean, I already have the script mostly finished. I'm just waiting for that game because I want to have a visual cue for that battle. It is just that important to me. Next question comes from Veal, and you want to know, what would be the best game to start with for newcomers to the Metal Gear Solid franchise? Start with Metal Gear Solid 3. It's best to just start at the beginning of the storyline. If you try to, I mean, it's kind of like how people like to handle Star Wars. It's like, do you watch it in the order that it was released, or do you watch it in chronological order? I say do it in chronological order. That way you know what exactly is going on. If you played in the order in which these games were released, then you're going to hear people talk about events that happened, and you're probably not going to fully understand it until you eventually get to it if you play the games in the order that they were released. So it's just best to keep it simple and just start from 3. However, I would advise you that you avoid Phantom Pain, because I assure you it doesn't add a damn thing to the story. The next question comes from K Prime, and he wants to know, when Dissidia NT comes to the West for consoles, if you're considering on purchasing it, which I am, what will be my main and secondary? I think it's going to be a toss-up between using Cloud or Titus, simply because one is a power duelist, the other is a speed fencer. I think that Titus is probably a much better opener, and I think Cloud is probably going to be the one who I hold in secondary most, just because he can probably put more damage, he can probably take the blunt of the damage, and I think he could play a very good support role. While Titus is more of a speed person, which means I can get at a lot of hits really, really quickly and get it out of the area, thereby giving Cloud his opening he needs to start doing some serious damage. So I think it's probably going to be a mixture of those two characters. I'm not sure how the combat system, I mean, I've seen what the combat system is. I'm hoping that there's a function that allows one-on-one combat, because that's going to do wonders for my Versus series, because I know that from what I've seen, it's just 3-on-3. I hope it's not like that. I hope that's the only mode they have, but if I could only pick just a secondary and a primary, it would probably be just a mixture of Titus and Cloud. The next question comes from Dark Skull, and you wanted to know, anyway, your question is, have I played Dragon Dogma, Dark Arise, and what did I think of it? No, I'm not really a fan of that franchise, so no, I didn't play it. Next question comes from JBat. You want to know, which superhero do I think will replace Iron Man in the Spider-Man Homecoming sequel? Hard to say. Iron Man was not in Homecoming as much as I thought he would, which is a good thing, because that was one of my biggest fears. But from what I've seen hints of, there's a possibility we could see Miles Morales. It would be interesting to have another Spider-Man exist in this universe, which will definitely give us a lot more options and much more variation of characters. But if they brought Iron Man back, it would make sense, because they're not really that far apart from each other in terms of, you know, where they usually station themselves. But yeah, if I had to make a guess, I think Miles Morales might make an appearance. I don't think he'll be Spider-Man. But I think he'll make some sort of cameo or make an official appearance. The next question comes from Stanley Perkins, or sorry, Joe Coolio. He wants to know if they were. My question is, okay, sorry, I don't even want to talk about episode 7 because it was a bullshit film anyway. But from your question, do I believe that there's any character that will be able to bring the beast down? No. No. Everyone in episode 7 is nothing but a group of pussies, and that includes Luke Skywalker himself. So, my answer to your question is absolutely not. Next question comes from Stanley Perkins, and you want to know, what is one of the few presidents in the U.S. that you find did a poor job or did not do much in office, and you would prefer if I didn't do one from modern day? Okay, I have one in mind, but this was a president that was in office before I was born, so I don't think he counts as a modern president. But I don't think, looking at my history with studying presidents, I don't think that Gerald Ford really did that good of a job. Now, for those of you that don't know, he's pretty much the president who took over after Nixon pretty much stepped down. He really wasn't in office that long, because he was only allowed to complete Nixon's second term, and Nixon was only in office for maybe a little more than a year, so Gerald Ford really had less than 3 years, and half of his time was spent pretty much cleaning up Nixon's mess. And because of that, he really just didn't have an opportunity to do anything. He was really a placeholder. I'm a firm believer that if you become president, if you think you're going to be in for 4 years, you're really only going to be president for 2. And because the next 2 is pretty much going to be you trying to set yourself up to be reelected, which is a similar thing that I think happened with Obama. You have to remember that in his 8 years, I believe that really a good portion of his first term, or even probably all of his first term, was really spent on cleaning up Bush's mess. I don't think it was until his second term where he really had a good amount of time or idea in order to get things done. I think that Gerald Ford really suffered the same fate. I just think he had the disadvantage of really being forced to be president during a very, very perilous time. But I don't think he was a bad president. I just don't think he was put in a position to really do anything significant, and that's why I don't think he really did that good of a job. But I don't entirely blame him. The next question comes from Matthew Keller, and he wants to know, have I ever experienced a flick that left me ill after seeing it? Yeah, movie 43. Still, even after all these years, I still get sick about thinking about the film because I didn't know what the hell it was about. I had the whole theater to myself, and when I left, I didn't know what the hell I saw. It was just a really just, what the hell did I see? I mean, it's one thing to go into a movie blind with actors that you don't know who they are. I mean, if the movie had been a bunch of unknowns, I wouldn't have had a problem. But the fact that the movie was riddled with actors that I know can act. I know they can act, and I'm like, why the hell are you doing this? This is like the worst. Like, did someone blackmail you? And from what my research told me, and from what a couple other YouTubers had said, yeah, some of these actors had been blackmailed, so that made it even worse. So yeah, that movie just still makes me feel sick. The next question comes from John Allen. He wants to know, which is my favorite to least favorite genre of games and movies? Alright, we'll stick with games. My least favorite genre of games is sports games. My favorite would probably have to be action-adventure. And when it comes to movies, I think my least favorite genre of movies is musicals. And I think my favorite would be crime dramas. The next and last question comes from Veal, and you want to know, if I were to win the lottery but could only use the money for my channel, what would I do? I would probably buy better equipment. Better camera, better lighting. I'd probably get a much better setup. Maybe put some sound foam. Probably buy some new editing programs I could use. Probably buy a much more efficient, faster computer. But one thing I would probably do is I would probably see if I could hire an animator for my Versus series, because I know those are like really, really popular and people say you should get an animator. I just don't have the money to do that, and the only ones that I've seen that can do that are those that do their own animations, or if you go to something like a Screwtax Death Battle series. But I would definitely want to hire someone who could do some really great animations. I think that would really help. So I think that's what I would use if I won the lottery. And with that, those are all the questions you guys sent for this week. I'd like to thank all of you guys for making this episode possible. If you guys have any more questions you would like me to answer in next week's episode, be sure to send your questions in the comments down below, but make sure you get them in before next Wednesday before I start filming this, and make sure you pick only one question per person. And like always, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.